The movie opens with an old man named Bill waking up in bed and hearing a mysterious voice say, "Yes," which confuses him. The next morning, we learn that Bill is a wealthy New York telecommunications magnate who lives in a mansion in the countryside. It turns out he is approaching his 65th birthday, so his eldest daughter, Allison, is planning a big party for him. We also meet Bill's younger daughter, Susan, who is dating a man named Drew, who works for her father. Shortly after, Drew also arrives, and all of them head to the city on a helicopter. On the way, Bill asks Susan if she really loves Drew and wants to marry him, to which she answers, "Probably." However, Bill thinks she isn't passionately in love with him and advises her to take a chance on finding the right one. Upon getting off the helicopter, Bill and the others head to work while Susan arrives at a coffee shop. There, she overhears a mysterious man talking on his phone and calling someone honey. After he hangs up, Susan notices that the man is very attractive, and he apologizes for speaking so loudly. He claims it was his sister who had just broken up with her boyfriend. He shares that he just moved to the city, and Susan reveals that she's a doctor. The man then begins flirting and even jokes that maybe she could be the one for him, which makes Susan smile. The scene then cuts to Bill, who is in his office when he feels a sudden pain in his chest and starts hearing the mysterious voice again, which tells him, "Yes." When Bill responds that he didn't ask a question, the voice says that he knows what the answer is for. The pain soon disappears, after which the scene cuts to Susan and the handsome man in the coffee shop, who seem to be really getting along. He claims to be doing pro bono work but is willing to go above and beyond for the right woman. It's soon time to say goodbye, so both jokingly admit how much they liked each other. As they go their separate ways, they can't help but glance back at each other while walking. Both think about stopping the other to ask for their contact number, but they end up hesitating. However, after Susan finally leaves, the man becomes lost in his thoughts, during which he's shockingly struck by two vehicles, leading to his death. That night, Bill is having dinner with his family when he once again hears the voice saying someone is waiting for him at the door. He sends his maid, and the woman soon returns, confirming that there's indeed a gentleman there. Bill then instructs her to send the man to the library, saying he will be there shortly. Shortly after, Bill arrives at the library where the mysterious person is hiding behind the books. The voice then reveals that he has been around for eternity and has grown bored, so he wants to have some adventure before he takes Bill. The old man is confused by all of this, and soon the mysterious person steps out, revealing that he's none other than the handsome man from that morning. In a shocking twist, Bill realizes this man is Death, who informs him that he is going to die, but will give him some time beforehand. Death then explains that this body belongs to the young man whose life he took that morning. At this moment, the maid interrupts them and asks if the gentleman will also have dinner with the family. Bill refuses, but Death says he will, leaving the old man with no choice but to take him. He then introduces him to his family, which includes Allison, her husband Quince, and Drew. Bill explains that he's an old friend, and when they ask his name, he comes up with the name Joe Black. Joe then begins eating with them and behaves like a little child, curious about everything. Shortly after, Susan also arrives for dinner and is shocked to see the handsome man from the coffee shop. They begin chatting, but Susan notices him behaving completely differently from that morning, which confuses her. She confronts him about it, and Joe states that he wasn't himself that morning, which leaves her a bit disappointed. When the family asks where he's going to live, Joe shocks everyone by saying he plans to live in the mansion. After dinner, Bill asks him why he met his daughter in the morning, and Joe explains that it was the dead young man who met her, not him. Bill then shows him to his room, after which a curious Joe wanders around the house. He soon reaches the kitchen, where he tries peanut butter for the first time and is fascinated. He soon runs into Susan at the swimming pool, who tells him it's strange that his father invited an outsider to the family dinner, let alone allowed him to stay overnight. She is also upset because Joe was charming this morning and now he's behaving very oddly. Upon hearing this, Joe simply apologizes and says he would like them to be friends. The next morning, Bill arrives to see Joe, who says that he wants to accompany him to work. Bill reluctantly agrees and makes a deal, saying he won't reveal Joe's identity in exchange for leaving his family alone. Later, they arrive at his workplace, where a board meeting is taking place, which Joe insists on attending. Bill thus introduces him to everyone, and they find it very odd to see an outsider in such a confidential meeting, but Quince seems friendly. Soon the meeting starts, and Drew reveals that one of their biggest competitors is offering to merge with them in exchange for a large sum of money. Drew pushes for the deal, saying it's $1 billion opportunity, but Bill is adamantly opposed. He reveals that he started this business to spread the unbiased truth, so he doesn't want to associate it with companies that are only interested in profit. The situation becomes very tense, so Bill dismisses the meeting and walks out of the room. Afterward, Bill tells Joe that he wants to be alone for a while, so he asks him to explore the city. Joe agrees and soon arrives at the hospital to meet Susan, who is surprised to see him. While they talk, a sick woman arrives and quickly realizes that this man is not human, which scares her. Joe then surprises everyone by speaking the woman's native language and assures her that everything is fine. When she's alone, he confirms to her that he is indeed Death, but he's on vacation now. The woman is suffering from pain and asks to die peacefully, but Joe assures her that it's not her time yet. That evening at the house, Quince approaches Bill and tells him he fully supports his decision, but maybe he can look into other merging offers next week. Bill agrees but says he's not sure how much time he has, and it all depends on Joe. This surprises Quince, who later shares this with Drew, who becomes jealous of the new guy. Later, during a meal, Bill asks his family if they can have another dinner together tomorrow, which surprises his daughters. Joe and Susan then talk about the sick lady from the hospital, and Drew is furious that Joe went to see her. After dinner, Susan approaches Drew, who confronts her about her closeness with the new guy, but she defends Joe and says she likes talking to him, which causes Drew to storm off in anger. Susan then notices Joe and asks who he is and what he is doing with her dad, but he doesn't answer her. The curious woman asks if he is married or has a girlfriend, but he denies this, which seems to please her. The next morning, we see Drew holding a secret meeting with the board members and turning them against Bill. He reveals how the competitor has raised the price twice, suggesting they must proceed with the deal even though Bill disagrees. The partners are unconvinced, so Drew begins bad-mouthing Joe, claiming the new guy is responsible for influencing Bill's mind toward bad decisions. To prove his point, he presses Quince to reveal how Bill claimed that his decision is up to Joe. Quince is reluctant to go against his father-in-law, but when Drew presses, he finally confirms it's true. That night, the family gathers for another dinner, during which Allison begins excitedly talking about her dad's birthday party. She asks him to choose between 2 cakes, but he doesn't seem to care about the party and behaves rudely. This makes the poor girl cry, so Bill apologizes to her and happily chooses a cake to comfort her. Afterward, Susan takes Joe on a tour around the house, during which she shockingly begins kissing him. Joe also kisses her back, and he is amazed by the feeling, as it is something entirely new for him. The next day, when Bill arrives at work, he is shocked to find another board meeting taking place without his knowledge. Drew once again begins pressuring him for the merger, revealing that they have offered an even greater amount, but Bill makes it clear that he isn't interested. An angry Drew then starts questioning about Joe and why he's always with him, but the old man has no answer. Drew now crosses all his lines and cites an article of the company stating that when Bill turns 65, he must retire. He will be able to attend meetings if he wishes, but he will not make decisions. Everyone votes in favor except Quince and another board member, which makes Bill feel betrayed and prompts him to walk away. Afterward, Quince privately confronts Drew about his actions, but Drew reveals that he intends to dismantle the company and sell it to the highest bidder. This would make them millionaires, and he urges Quince to come aboard, which the latter refuses. However, Drew threatens him that if he opens his mouth, he will tell Bill that it was Quince who influenced the board member in the secret meeting, and soon Allison will also find out about it. Later, at home, Susan approaches Joe, and the two begin passionately kissing each other. One thing leads to another, and they end up making love for the first time. Afterward, Susan proceeds to leave, and while they kiss each other goodbye, Bill notices them and is shocked. Later, he privately confronts Joe and forbids him from getting close to his daughter, but Joe, who has fallen in love for the first time, refuses and isn't scared by the old man's threats. The next day, Joe arrives at the hospital with flowers to meet Susan, but she isn't at work. She has instead come home to look for him, but comes across her dad instead. Bill then asks about her relationship with Joe, and she reveals that she has finally found the passionate love he always talked about. But Bill asks not to get closer and says that the relationship won't last because Joe has to leave soon, which makes her feel very sad. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Joe comes across the sick lady from before, and the two begin chatting. He reveals that he came here to meet the doctor and admits that he is in love with her, but the sick woman finds this problematic since he isn't human and this isn't a normal relationship. She advises him not to deceive himself and to leave this world with the good memories he has, because getting closer will only hurt his beloved. The old woman then asks him once again to relieve her suffering. This time, Joe agrees and finally takes her life away so she can finally rest in peace. Upon returning home, Joe informs Bill that his vacation is over, which means it's time for Bill to go to the afterlife. The old man seems ready, so Joe gives him time to enjoy his birthday party tomorrow, after which they can leave. The next day, the day of the party finally arrives, during which Joe finds Quince drinking alcohol and feeling guilty for his actions. The man confides everything to Joe and wonders if he should come clean to Bill or keep his mouth shut. Joe advises him to speak the truth and assures him that his father-in-law will forgive him. Elsewhere, Bill approaches Allison, who is still organizing everything, and asks why she is doing this. She responds that it's because she loves him and he's a wonderful father. Allison then becomes emotional and says she knows Bill loves Susan more, as his eyes light up whenever she enters the room. But Allison doesn't feel jealous, since in the end, she is also loved by her dad, and that's what matters. Bill feels very sad upon hearing this, so he thanks his daughter, and the two share a heartfelt hug. That evening, the party finally starts, during which Joe and Susan spend some time together. She expresses her love for him, but he shocks her by revealing that he has to leave tonight. This makes her feel very sad, so she begs him to stay and says she will wait for him. Elsewhere, Quince approaches Bill and finally comes clean about everything, but his father-in-law surprisingly forgives him. Bill also asks Quince to summon Drew on the helicopter as he needs to discuss something important. After Quince leaves, Joe tells Bill that he is in love with Susan and wants to take her with him. This makes Bill very angry, and he reminds Joe of their deal to stay away from his family. Joe refuses to change his mind, so Bill reminds him that true love is selfless and reveals that it was the coffee shop guy Susan fell for. He asks Joe to tell Susan the whole truth and then see what happens. Upon hearing this, Joe says nothing and heads outside to find Susan. When he eventually finds her, Joe tries to confess the truth, but Susan reminds him of their first meeting in the coffee shop and the sweet things he said to her. She reveals how he was having trouble finding the right woman, but now he has found her. Upon hearing this, Joe realizes that she is actually in love with the coffee shop guy and not him. This breaks his heart, so he decides to be selfless and kisses her one last time. He then promises her that she'll always have that boy from the coffee shop, and Susan suddenly understands that this man is someone else. But she's too scared to ask the truth, so the two tearfully bid each other goodbye. Following this, Joe returns to Bill's office and informs him that only the two of them will leave, which pleases the old man. He soon learns that Drew has landed, so Bill calls all his board members and puts them on a conference call. Shortly after, Drew enters the room, and Bill begins accusing him of being a mole for the rival company. Drew obviously denies this and begins accusing Joe of poisoning Bill's mind, so Joe announces that he is finally ready to reveal his true identity. This worries Bill, who tries to stop him, but Joe shockingly reveals that he's actually a member of the IRS. He reveals how he has secretly been advising Bill and investigating the merger between the two companies. During this process, Joe discovered numerous irregularities on Drew's part, as well as evidence of collusion with the rival company. Upon hearing all this, Drew is shocked and finally confesses his actions, but he still refuses to back down without a fight. He wants to call his lawyer, but Bill says that if he doesn't want to go to jail, he must quit his job without making a scene. With this, Drew reluctantly says he will resign when he goes back to the city, but the board members on the conference call speak up, saying they heard everything. They decide to fire Drew immediately and reinstate Bill as the CEO, so Drew feels defeated and walks away from there. Satisfied and happy, Bill accepts his fate and joins the heartwarming final birthday party during his last hours. He takes the opportunity to deliver a moving speech to everyone and thanks them for helping him live a wonderful life. After hugging Allison, he approaches Susan and tells her that he has given his life meaning. Susan is confused and scared, but he asks her not to worry, assuring her that he doesn't regret anything in his life. The father and daughter dance one last time, while Joe watches from a distance with tears in his eyes. Amidst the fireworks on display, Bill quietly leaves the party and joins Joe to make his way to the afterlife. As they walk away, Susan sees them in the distance and tries to follow, but soon notices the two men disappear behind a small bridge. However, her eyes widen in shock when she sees Joe emerge alone from behind the bridge and walk toward her. Susan then approaches him, but to her shock, the young man is confused about why he's there. He claims he has no memory of where he was or what he did during that time, but he cannot forget his conversation with Susan in the coffee shop and how much he liked her. Upon hearing this, Susan finally realizes that this is the guy from the coffee shop whom she actually loved. She now understands who Joe Black was and tells the man she wishes she had known his father. Despite her grief over the loss of her father, a new chapter begins for her, and she descends hand in hand with her loved one as the movie concludes. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and watch this one too.